to
Oh, all right, all right. Oh, it's good. It's good to see. Yebo, Yebo. That's right. We're happy to see everybody. This is wonderful, and it's a great day today. And so we're very very fortunate today to first of all see all of you here, and those of who are coming also, and those who will be online with us. We know that there are many people who will be on the YouTube channel, and that's wonderful. So tell your friends that this is going to be an incredible event. I just want to first of all just announce that we have on June the 1st, we have two things on June the 1st. We have Donald Scott Sr., Obigwe, will be speaking about an incredible historical group here in Philadelphia called the Montiers, a Philadelphia family generational epic. He's written a book about it, and he's going to be talking about that. Philadelphia, of course, is one of the oldest Black cities in the United States. And so he's got the history of a family, and he'll be telling us that. After him, on June the 15th, we will have Dr. Malaika Muteri, originally from Kenya, who is actually one who has written this wonderful book called Bantu Waltz, The Path of God. She will be talking about the culture, the African culture, particularly the Bantu people. So that will be on June 15th. On June 22nd, we have the great Dr. Nadav, who will be talking about maximizing culture to transform the world. Those will be our upcoming programs. And then later on, we will have programs for September, because we will not be here in July and August. But we are, you can go to our YouTube site, to the Malefikete Asante lecture series on YouTube, and find any of our lectures. So we're just really delighted that you are here today. Let me just say, before I introduce our outstanding speaker, that we are on the 5th anniversary of the death of George Floyd. And George Floyd was murdered, perhaps one of the events that most represent the conflict between Africans in this country and the white power establishment over the years. He was murdered on television, on video, and probably never in the history of this country, as I can remember, at least as long as I've been alive, have we seen somebody murdered on video. I mean, the young lady, Darnella Frazier, who took that video for 10 minutes and stood there during the period of COVID. She took that video and it went around the world, and everybody saw Derek Chauvin on the neck of George Floyd. And so I was asked last week by ABC News, what did I think this moment meant? And I told them I thought it was a pivotal moment, but there have been so many pivotal moments in our history. In 1918, Mary Turner was lynched in my hometown of Valdosta, Georgia, and her belly was split open, and a fetus was 8 months old, was stomped to death, and she was murdered, and then her body was dragged through the streets of my town. That's 1918. And then I told him that in 1921, we had the Tulsa bombing, the bombing of the city of Tulsa, particularly the Black commercial area. First time that bombs were dropped on the Black community was not here in Philadelphia in 1985, but it was actually in 1921 in Tulsa. And then I told them that in 1955, Emmett Till was murdered. And we saw that as a pivotal moment, particularly because his mother was defiant. And she said, "No, I want the casket open. I want the world to see what they did to my child." And that, I remember, I was traumatized by that. I was a young person. I was very traumatized by that. And I thought, well, that was a pivotal moment. That moment in 1955. And then there was a moment actually in 1964. In 1964, three young men who had been engaged in voter registration, Andrew Goodman, Michael Swerner, and James Chaney, were murdered in the South. And I said to them, I said, that's a pivotal moment too. I said, so the murder of George Floyd in 2020 was another one of these pivotal moments. And so what happens during a pivotal moment is that there is a rise of consciousness and a rise of awareness about where we are and the condition that we live in. And I think that we live in a society, particularly now, where where it's necessary for us to be aware and vigilant about the society that we live in. I am very pleased tonight to introduce our speaker. We have a young man who brings a lot of energy and a lot of brilliance to his understanding of life, and he's been engaged and involved as an activist in the city of Philadelphia for a long time, and he's has a large following. Part of it comes from his work in the media industry. He was a longtime host on the radio, and he is a constant, regular guest, I should say, on radio now in Philadelphia. People know him at Temple University. They know him as a rapping professor. I know him as a colleague. I know him as a wonderful intellectual who is gifted and devoted to the interest of all people. And he has demonstrated to me a firm understanding and belief that we can do better than we have been doing in the world. This young man, let me just tell you, Dr. Jabali Aday, whose slave name was Aaron Smith. We all had those names. I had one. I had one too. Some of y'all still got them, but we won't talk about that. But I had one of those too, right? But Dr. Jabali Aday is really a fine person, and I have always, from this platform, always said that he's been persecuted at Temple University. And I've often tried to figure out why have they persecuted him. And the only thing I could come up with is that, number one, he was the most popular professor at Temple in our department, in the Department of Africology. When they had him teaching classes, you would have hundreds of students waiting outside just to listen to him speak. And he created a course called Tupac Shakur. And that class, the Tupac class, was the most popular class, elective. You mean it wasn't required that you take that class. It was the most popular class in the College of Liberal Arts. And that's the spirit that he has. And not only did he bring that kind of spirit but he also is one of the, I was with him in Kemet. He and I walked through the temples together in Kemet. We walked through the tombs together, and we discussed the nature of ancient Africa and ancient Kemet, and we saw the same things. This young brother at the time was just fascinated and learning as much as he could about the antiquity of African culture. But beyond that, he's a scholar, and he has you will hear him talk a little bit about the book that he and I wrote at his insistence, asking me to join him in the book on Du Bois. The book is called Reading Du Bois, an Afrocentric critique of the color line. But he also did a book on Afrocentricity and Afrofuturism for the University of Mississippi Press. And he's written articles on James Baldwin and articles on many, many different topics. And so he's been always a brother that you can depend on. And he has a strong following here in Philadelphia, as he should, and also a growing audience in the world. But I'm just delighted and honored to actually have him come and speak to you today on any topic that he wants to talk about. But I think it's Afrocentricity and the color line. All right. Thank you. Hey, brother.
How y'all doing? I see how much trouble we can get in 45 minutes. They said the revolution will not be televised, but they didn't say it wouldn't be live streamed. Oh, man. Okay. Molefe Kete Asante argues that Afrocentricity places African people at the center of their own experiences and understanding, as opposed to relegating them to the margins of Eurocentric ideologies. Afrocentricity views, analyzes, defines, and critiques phenomena centering Blacks as subjects rather than marginalized objects on the conceptual periphery of European analysis. Asante advances this revolutionary intellectual and cultural concept to encourage the agency and full humanity of African people as actors in all historical contexts. This means that any study of Africans must seek to locate the people squarely in the center of their own experiences and perspectives. Welcome to the Molefe Kete Asante Institute, 5535 Germantown Avenue. I never want to take for granted that people understand. I know the people here might understand fully and can come up here and do the same lecture about Afrocentricity, but I know that we're broadcasting around the world, and there might be people for the first time even hearing about these concepts, and I wanted to make sure that we begin accordingly. Two major topics I want to talk about. I want to talk about Du Bois. We wrote a book about Du Bois. I appreciate Dr. Asante for working on the book. But we're in a state of emergency. And there's so much attention to geographic relocation. All over the news, you hear about geographic relocation. And I said, we need to recenter and Afrocentrically tweak our understanding and our focus to the dislocation. We're not really as worried about ICE coming around and grabbing us up right now, for now. But we are concerned with the cultural and historical dislocation that continues to perpetuate the situation that we have internationally. And we're gonna get to, but okay, let's clap it one more time. Oh man, I had to do it. You know, it's almost like you're on your phone sometimes and you get that flood warning or something. You know, that beeping, and it's like a state of emergency. So I'm going to talk about the book, and I'm going to talk about Du Bois, but we are in a state of emergency. I think Sister Soldier said we are at war, right? So for those that don't know, I want to make sure. Ibrahim Traore, born in Kera. Let me make sure I get the main points, not where you go to high school and all that. I want to make sure that I say he studied geology, right? And he was part of the Association of Muslim Students, which is interesting, and the Marxist National Association of Students in Burkina Faso, right? In the latter, he rose to delegate and became known for defending his classmates in disputes. He graduated from the university with honors. In 2 years, these are some of the things that this brother has done, and this is why he's part of every conversation right now, because he might be the center focal point in the Black world in a way that we haven't seen since the death of Dr. King. And I would argue that this is a more international situation just because of social media and where we are in terms of the global community. This might be the largest, this touchstone has the greatest potential for transformation internationally than arguably anybody that we've seen since we've been in the Americas. You know how hard it was to get messages across, about what was happening in Haiti, right? And by the time it got here, they were able to, talk amongst themselves and suppress the information so the people on plantation. This is in real time. We get news about the Ivory Coast at the same time at the Ivory Coast, even if CNN don't want to report it. But that's a whole nother lecture for a whole nother day. Burkina Faso, right? They grew from approximately 18 billion to 22 billion in 2 years. Rejected loans from the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, and the World Bank. He said, quote, Africa doesn't need the World Bank, IMF, Europe, or America. Yeah, that's what they used to call a shouting moment, He reduced the salaries of ministers and parliamentarians by 30% and increased the salaries of civil servants by 50%. Basically, they're doing the opposite of what we do. He paid off Burkina Faso's local debts. Anybody want to check the debt right now? I think it's every person it translates to is $100,000 in debt with the trillions that we have in the national debt currently. It's almost as much as the military budget, right now in terms of how fast we're going. So while we're going like this, and the currency is being debased and they talking about quantitative easing and the like, other countries are stabilizing and getting together. And the real point of what they call that, the tipping point, as Doc talks about, we don't need everybody, just the tipping point is that the African nations don't need trade. Africa is the only place that don't need nobody else. So if the people that don't need you are stabilizing while you're putting yourself in a greater situation where you're going to need more people, we got an interesting future coming, and I'm going to talk to you about this, brother. Established 2 tomato processing plants, the first ever in Burkina Faso in 2023, inaugurated state-of-the-art gold mines to enhance local processing, stopped the export of unrefined Burkina Faso gold to Europe. He built Burkina Faso's second cotton processing plant. Previously, the country had only one. He opened the first ever national support center for artisanal cotton processing to assist local cotton farmers in 2 years, y'all. He banned the wearing of British legal wigs and gowns in local courts and introduced traditional Burkinabe attire. He prioritized agriculture by distributing 400 tractors, 239 tilers, 710 motor pumps, and 714 motorcycles to boost production and support rural stakeholders. He provided access to improvised seeds and other farm inputs to maximize agricultural output. Tomato production in Burkina Faso increased from 315 metric tons in 2022 to 360,000 metric tons in 2024. Millet production rose, rice production increased. He banned French military operations. He banned French media in Burkina Faso, expelled French troops from Burkina Faso. His government's constructing new roads, widening existing ones, upgrading gravel roads. He's building a new airport. This brother is doing what he's doing. There is nobody in the Black world that should not know about this brother and what he's doing right now. This is the standard. That's why in these other African nations, shout out to the Sahel nations, people are looking at their leader like, well, what you doing? Right next door, they seeing this, and they looking at their leader like, hey, man, you've been here for longer than 2 years. Some of them been around for I ain't gonna say, I don't want to. Y'all know the people. Y'all know the players. Y'all know the brother in Ivory Coast done inspired Donald Trump because he's supposed to be here for 2 terms, and then he stayed for a third. And he basically said the Constitution don't matter and hired his brother as the Minister of Defense. And Trump started rubbing his chin, said, I like that, right? So, let's talk a little bit about people who are prophetic, about the importance of Africa and how this color line and this line that people continue to cross as far as colonization and conquest, the connection between the two. The study of Du Bois is clouded with myths, sometimes of the subject's own making, and consequently secreted behind great walls of mystery. Our intention, me and Dr. Asante in the text that we wrote together, to unmask as much as we can of the biographical rendition of Du Bois' life, to examine critically how he constructed patterns of behavior that lifted him as well as his people in the national imagination. I think you wrote that one, Doc. I like that. That was good. But I thought it was imperative, the component of the national, you can say, or our national, but for those listening, the international imagination. What this brother Ibrahim has done is show us what is possible. We're not theorizing no more. Just last year, we were talking about the United States of Africa, and we had brother, talk about his efforts throughout his life, and trying to bring this to fruition. We got a brother now who walks around with his weapon no matter who he meets. I want to make sure I added that. Y'all saw when he went to meet Putin, right? He had a 45 right on his side, right? Still dressed like a general, right? He didn't change his attire. He didn't code switch, right? And he didn't even unload his weapon. This is a whole different mentality that the young people need to see. The young people are fascinated with power. Oh, they pose with the guns and everything else. They would love this brother Ibrahim. They just need to know him. Back in the day, they would say, do you know him? Right? That's what the preacher would always say. So we need to talk to these young people and make sure that they know him. There's a brother just like you who walk around with his gun all the time too, but he's doing it for a different reason. You need to know this brother. Okay, I thought it was imperative that we talked about Du Bois' death in Accra, Ghana, and the evolution of Du Bois, right? Because oftentimes we talk so much about the talented 10th and the contention with Garvey that we don't talk about where people got to. I would hate for you to look at me, where I was, 25 years ago. I don't know what I was doing. I probably partying when I should have been studying. I don't know. I was in college, right? But we want to look at the best of us. Dr. Santi talks about how we study ancient Kemet, not because that was the first, but because that was the apex. We want to look at the best of what African people have done so we can replicate it, right? So when we look at Du Bois, we don't want to just look at the journey. We want to see where the brother got to. We want to look back over his life, but the real understanding is even a brother as bourgeois as Du Bois in one lifetime can come to the realization that Africa is the answer. And we need to have a connection with Africa. Like Garvey said, we need to make it so when somebody does lynch a person in America, we could push the button and have international ramifications. There's a reason why Derek Chauvin wasn't kneeling on somebody from North Korea. The president would have came down himself and pushed Derek Chauvin off. Said, brother, they're going to be dropping nuclear bombs on San Francisco by 7 o'clock. You better get off them. They connected to a landmass, a flag, a language, and power, right? And we need to understand our potential to do the same, especially when it comes to African resources, right? So race is a term that was introduced by the radical cadre of European thinkers and religious leaders to classify humans biologically, physically, and genetically. I don't need to read all of this for the sake of our discussion today. Du Bois was intrigued with the political and social motivations behind the race discourse. If I steal $100 from you and you say, I know you did it, and then I hand you $10 and I say, my bad, I'm sorry, are we good? Because basically what we're dealing with is somebody that took us from our homeland, right? Took our language and our religion and took our families apart. And then they took our natural resources and then they divided like a big cake at the Berlin conference. And then Leopold went and took control and called himself a king sovereign in the Congo. And 10 million people lost their lives. And then know what they did? They signed this piece of paper that they called a proclamation. And they said, my bad. And people are like, wait a minute, the lines are still there. They still say the Anglo Gold Company, you're still here. 70% of the farms in South Africa are still owned by white Afrikaners to this day. And they look at you like, my bad. You took chains off. They said, but you still own everything. So right now, we don't see the difference between physical chains and economic and cultural and historical and educational chains. Somebody done locked you up 5 times and then unlocked one of your chains. And you started dancing. And he did too. He said it worked. These fools is so dumb. They're going to let me own all their farms, and everywhere in the world where people that are classified as white and non-white occupy the same space, the people classified as white or closer to occupy the better part of the land and control most of the natural resources to this day. Can you imagine Burkina Faso saying we want to put a base in New Jersey? Just the way they talk to other people. We're going to come over there and we're going to set up some stuff. They don't let nobody talk to them like that. And it only takes one person. It's like I always say, when you're at the club and somebody's parent shows up, it don't got to be your parent. They done messed up the vibe for everybody. Right? So now we just see one brother say, why can you come here and do what you want? And we literally can't even go there. They bragging about zero immigration for the last 90 days. We can't even go if we seeking refuge and asylum. But they can go over there and set up bases and take over mines and make 100-year deals on natural resources. And it took one person to say, this is crazy. And then everybody else say, you know what? You're right. The entrapment of talented tenth. So Du Bois also believed in the talented tenth. I don't want to focus on it, but I have to mention it, right? This was the idea that a small percentage of the African-American population who are exceptionally skilled should be designated, I don't know what that says right there. I don't know why it's covering like that up, but don't matter. But be cultural leaders, right? Now this, I used to be hard on Du Bois, but Dr. Asante's right. People say black people need to get together, and I always say not all of them. I read the COINTELPRO documents. Some of them are straight up agents working for the other side. We don't need them, right? And we don't need people who have decided not to be a part of anything. Some people are going to just, not care until it affects them. And by then it's going to be too late. Then they came for me, I think the famous poem goes, right? So I understand the problematic nature of Du Bois as an elitist in his assessment of the necessary percentage of those who should be in positions of leadership. But even in your local church, only 20% of the people are giving and leading, and the other 80% is just hanging out and benefiting from the work of the minority. So there's some statistical truth to the theory, although there's some class problems that exist based on Du Bois' vision and upbringing and his elitist assessment of himself before he even got involved with all these organizations. He did think he was better than all them white boys and everybody else. So that's just who Du Bois was. You can't hate on confidence. Some called it arrogant. We talked about this. But for the role he saw for himself, it was necessary that he felt a sense of responsibility for the uplift of millions of Africans whose chances for success had never been secured by the society. So even that, I like that the fact that they're explaining, not to justify, but to let people know where he was coming from. He's saying somebody got to do it. Like Ibrahim. He said in his speech, the young people are watching the elders so thoroughly colonized that they don't even have any hope for them and don't even want to talk to them anymore. They're more likely to do a coup d'etat in their own, communities than they are to sit and rationalize with people who have been doing this for the last 50 to 70 years. And I don't know if I blame them. Chapter 4 in our text talks about the narrative of socialism and considering democracy. And talks about the anti-communist campaign fever in the 1950s. But most importantly, down here it says when Kwame Nkrumah invited him, talking about Du Bois, to come to Ghana and found the Encyclopedia Africana, he leaped at the opportunity. Now, I've been saying for a long time, one of the differences is the books they read and are exposed to. People say, what are we going to do with these young people? Malcolm said Malcolm was in jail, didn't meet the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, came in contact with information that transformed his life in a way that he could transform the world. Books. You want to know the difference between Detroit Red, BKA Satan, BKA Malcolm Little, and Malcolm X? Books. It was just a word. He came in contact with teaching, and it took a pimp, drug dealer, burglar, drug abuser, and turned him into Malcolm X. Stop asking what we need to do. We need them to read. We need them to read. We need them to read. That's it. That's it. Anybody who's doing a missionary routine, they're going to say, have you heard the word? He was the word. Everybody's pushing a word. This is what it is. Now, if you want to do wrong, well, you got to push it. Your mother, your daddy, and Ali, he give you something else. But in terms of uplift and transformation on a global level of African people, Dr. King was going to Morehouse at 15. You know why? Because he was reading. Because his dad was a big-time pastor who understood the importance of education. And he had a gift. This is the difference. When Marcus Garvey wanted to come to America, who do you want to meet? Who was Marcus Garvey coming to meet when he came to America who he didn't get to meet? Booker T. Washington. How did he find out about Booker T. Washington? The internet? He must have read about him, right? You tell me anybody that did anything, I'm going to tell you what they was reading about and how that led them to do what they was doing. When you talk about the Panthers and they was talking about the Mao and the Marxists, they was reading. Even if you don't like the way they applied it or they should have got a more Afrocentric story, they was reading. And that consciousness preceded action. Restorative imagination. I talk about the book, The Comet. I don't need to talk too much about that, but I would like for you to look at a lot of people's renditions. They got a lot of artistic renditions of The Comet. And one thing I want to do in terms of Afrocentricity is to expand this application. So this is basically, a sci-fi, more Afrofuturistic attempt by Du Bois at storytelling. And he talks about this comet that's going to, hit the earth and how it transforms the race dynamic and humanity at the same time. And I say, you know what? Oftentimes we don't have enough fun in Afrocentricity. You know, it's so much, it's so serious. You know, it's life and death conversations. But sometimes I wanted to show that if you look at things, even art, from an Afrocentric lens, you can get a new revelation. But I'm going to go past that for today. He had seen the Russian Revolution, the advancement of the workers from all ethnic communities, and the emerging Soviet Union. So similarly, I paralleled that with what we talked about earlier in this conversation, with what other people are seeing happening in Burkina Faso. The reason why he envisioned it, some of y'all might have sort of spooked us out by the door. And he said, it's not about black versus white. You know, it's about love and freedom so much that you kill for it, die for it. But he said, it happened all over the world. He said, look at this place. Look at Libya. Look at Guam. And look at the people who are raising up. He's trying to tell these brothers in the ghetto, it's already happening. You don't got to imagine it. You just got to look and read and see where it's already occurring and understand that it could be done. Roger Bannister is the man who ran the mile in under a certain time. And before that, nobody had done it. But after he did it, everybody saw that it was possible. And then everybody started running the sub whatever mile, right? Same thing with Mike Tyson. Once Mike Tyson got knocked out that first time, we said, oh, it could be done, right? Shout out to Mike. I don't want no problems. Du Bois in the color line, right? Battling toxic social construction of race. Now, this is interesting because we have to, what do they call that? Get ahead of it in politics. When there's a problem coming out, something's going to leak in the press, they say, we got to get ahead of this problem. And some of the critiques of a wonderful text, Being Human Being, that Dr. Asante and Dr. Dove wrote, people were intentionally trying to misconstrue the message of the text and trying to say that it was a humanist approach that abandoned the Afrocentric foundation, when all the while we're acknowledging the foundational scientific fallacy of race as it's been propagated throughout the world as a tool for hierarchy and colonization, but still understanding the importance of Afrocentric identity and culture. Both could be true. But we are going to find people as we move to this whole notion of I don't see color, they're going to replace that with race as a social construction. They just ain't in that part of the conversation yet, but they coming. The same people that want to deny the unique experiences of African people and how they play out in the world, they're going to have an inroad to the conversation by saying, why are we even talking about this? And that's not what we're saying. We're saying dismantle the hierarchy. And, you know, they're saying, don't hold me accountable. And don't make changes to the existing established order that prioritizes and privileges and entitles me while it persecutes you. So we need to be conscious of that. So that's the only reason I had that up there. Evolution Du Bois and the Pan-African race organizer. This is my favorite part because you got this Pan-African conference in 1900. One of the most productive and consequential African-American intellectuals. His convening of the post-war Congress in London was a bold assertion of his leadership role in the African world. And I said, you know what? It's time for another one. It's time for us to get together. We got everybody talking about the brother. We need to meet with the brother. If Farrakhan can get 1 million people throughout the world together, this brother make the call right now and say, yeah, I had to talk to Russia because they got the bombs. I had to deal with China because they can send troops, but I need to talk to my people throughout the world. That should be the next conversation. Because as long as Black people, especially in America, who have always been thought leaders, are aware, we can change the tide. Y'all remember in the 90s when it was divest from apartheid holding companies, right? We was on college campuses waking up. And they said, wait, the students know where our money is? Now we got to move our money. The students talking about leaving. They embarrassing us in the media. The international students don't want to come here no more. All we had to do was stand outside and march and let people know the jig is up. Like the Wizard of Oz, we pulled the curtain back. And right now, the reason why they're not putting this brother on the news every night is because they don't want the curtain to get pulled back. That's why we going to pull the curtain back. No, so I'll read this part, just the title. The last chapter in our book is called The Afrocentric Corrective at the Crest of Victory. And I say that because I believe right now we're at the crest of victory. This is Macron, right? Boo. But then there's a brother doing all the work on the bottom, right? And then you see the brother Ibrahim. Let me give you a statistic. I'm going to take my time with this part. France holds the world's 4th largest gold reserve with 2,436 tons stored in wherever in France. I don't talk French like that. Yet the country has no active gold mines. I'm going to say that one more time. They got 2,436 tons, right? A ton is 2,000 pounds, right? They got 2,400 of 2,000, right? But they ain't got no gold mine. In contrast, Mali, one of the top global gold producers with 14 official gold mines, has 0 tons of gold reserves in the central bank of West African states. That's enough to make somebody want to turn over some tables like Jesus in the temple. That's, wait a minute, you've been playing with me. You was singing We Are the World. You was putting up squares for Black Lives Matter. You was doing all this. You had all my money. You didn't even give me the 5 out of the 100. You should take a trip to Paris and study abroad. If I go to Paris, I might not come back. I'm going to be some problems over there. I'm going to be like Killmonger in Black Panther, grabbing stuff out the museum. This is mine. This is mine. They got you over there studying, looking, standing in front of the Eiffel Tower with your hand on the top and all that they be doing. Meanwhile, the gold reserves is that way. And your ancestors is turning and spinning like, what? Wake up. Like Lawrence Fishburne said at the end of School Days, right? Wake up. They got no gold mines, and they got 2,434 more tons of gold than Mali, who got 14 gold mines. In the street, they say something like, I ain't got no rap. Nothing else to talk about. Until we get this right, don't talk to me about no inclusion. Don't talk to me about diversity, equity. Don't talk to me about Donald Trump. Don't talk to me about nothing. There's nothing to talk about. Oh, we just want to meet with you. No. You want to give back the gold and then meet. Unless you want to meet about how fast and how you're going to give back the gold. But Macron had said, and other French leaders said that without, Africa, they'd be a third world country basically overnight. And I say, things happen. Sometimes I don't say things, but for the sake of the... Do y'all remember when they had that filter up and they were talking about pray for Paris? Remember that? Everybody should pray for Paris. I'm going to go back one slide. You had the nerve. You had the gall. You had the audacity to tell me to pray. Well, they do say pray for your enemies. I don't know. Maybe it was a Christian thing. I don't know. Pray for Paris. You ain't never seen pray for the Congo. It don't cost nothing for Zuckerberg to make a little filter. You ain't never seen pray for Rwanda. You ain't never seen pray for Haiti, right? Let's go through it. I say pray for Benin, right? Pray because right now they saying that a Dutch museum plans to return a priceless Benin bronze in June of 2025. That's a couple weeks away, y'all. So I'm praying for Benin because I know that the devil is wicked and clever, and he is a master deceiver, and he has made promises that he has not kept. I had a grandmother. She was a Seminole, and she used to say, she said, never trust the pale face. They made 500 plus treaties with the indigenous people, and they didn't keep a single one. Don't never trust them. So I'm hoping, and I'm praying. Let me keep this going. I say pray for Zambia, because if you know about the story of Glencore and what they was doing in copper mines, this is a documentary I was talking about, Stealing Africa. And it starts, in that region where the founder lives. And he had made so much money overnight that they had to change their tax laws and everything. And they was taking a vote on what to do with the money that they had gotten from the gold mine. And one of the liberal brothers said, well, maybe we should give some of that money back to the black people who got us living all rich. And they took a vote, and the majority of people was like, no, we're not giving them nothing. They was like, why they persecuting this man, the rich guy, right? So and then they showed Zambia and the kids outside of the copper mines, and it was all filthy, and they were overworked and exploited, and people getting lung cancer. So I'm not gonna pray for Paris, somebody else could do that, but I'm gonna pray for these. I'm gonna pray for the Sudan, right? Genocidal determination in Sudan and imposing accountability measures. A couple tons of gold could help a lot of situations. So when you think that somebody is watching you go through what you're going through in the area where their wealth is being created, but only concern they have is, are the mines secure? They say everything's on fire, but is the mine secure? They say people are being displaced by the millions, but some of y'all remember Bill Clinton said it outright during Rwanda in the 90s. He said it's not in America's interest. They was like, Bill Clinton, they cutting people with machetes, and the millions of people being there, and babies being. He got on the mic and said, that's not in America's interest. And some people didn't know what that meant. That meant ain't no money over there. Or it meant the money's secure. Our interests are secure. We got our troops, around the downtown area, like 92 in LA, and them people for Rodney King gonna burn everything but what we care about. So we just gonna go ahead and film it and make it look like they're confirming our stereotypes as opposed to admitting that we caused this problem. Like in the Kerner Commission, they said that it was the whites that perpetuated and started. They basically found out that the white intervention and designing was the problem. You can look in the Kerner Commission. They basically told you what it is. So next time a black person says, we are our own worst enemy, you could take them back to the Kerner Commission and say, white people don't even say that. The white people knew this is us. They not like, okay. Pray for Congo. And beware those Mobutus, those traitors. The ones that'll be right there with you. He selected the brother. He handpicked the brother. He said, I want you to roll with me. Right? I said, I can't trust these other people. Brother got bought out. I don't know if you saw that. Ibrahim Traore, they said they offered his security some millions recently, right? He came forward and said they offered me millions to take out the leader. I didn't take it. So we don't need that Mobutu spirit. Look at this. They could show this every night. They don't got to show what Trump was tweeting. But they want to show you something that's going to put you in a spell. To the point where you say, I don't want to see Trump no more. I'm turning off the news. No. You need to detach from Trump, not the news. You need a new news source, but you still need news. But people can get you so frustrated, right, that you just get like battered down. And you're so tired of seeing the same thing over and over again, you don't even engage in world politics anymore. Instead of just changing your channel, as they say. Ivolé, that's what they used to call them. The ones that used to speak good French and want to look like the white boys and all that good stuff, right? But for a while, this is what was happening with both of these brothers, but the difference was consciousness. Now we go to this sunken place brother. This is the one who came forward and tried to say that Burkina Faso was, using their gold and keeping it for the military, and we need to go ahead and intervene over there in Burkina Faso. But the good thing about the internet is within like a half hour, there was brothers and sisters on the continent saying, people of the world, don't fall for this again. They did this to Biko. They did this to Nkrumah. They did this to Gaddafi. Please don't let them come into a democratically elected leader's domain and do something dirty like they trying to kidnap somebody out of Haiti or something. No, we're not doing that no more. They said the brother apparently started apologizing, but he didn't do it publicly. So Traore was like, no, if you're going to make the accusation publicly, you got to make the apology public. Don't play games now. But apparently we were more sophisticated than they had anticipated. They thought we was going to go for it again and let them do what they do, especially when they gave us a black face. Like when Colin Powell said, I think they got weapons of mass destruction. And look, I got this powder right here, and I'm black. I'm from New Jersey, and y'all should let them go in there. And we was like, well, Colin Powell said it, and then 1 million Iraqis is dead and all that. And then we look back and said, man, what happened to the weapons of mass, right? So they said, we're going to try the whole black play again. We're going to get another black brother to go up there. I shouldn't say brother. We're going to get another black person. Kinfolk. We're going to another black person to go up there, and that's going to work. We're going to Obama the situation. This brother got up there, and he was, I guess, so far away from the cookout that he couldn't eat. Like we knew he wasn't one of us. Like okay. Langley, that's his name. You could look him up, and instantly, if you try to look up his family, I bet you won't find him. It's like we try to find those police officers after something happens. You can't find no pictures. You won't find no address. It'd be like, what kind of internet are the police using? Because everybody else could be found within like an hour. They got TikTokers that find people. They say, you take a picture anywhere in the world, I'll tell you where you are by the background. That's what they do. They say that building, that light pole, and they start doing the math. They can't find these cops' pictures now. The brother done got shot, right? The recent situation where the brother got shot. They said that he had his back to the officer. Then they said it was an undercover officer. We ain't heard no name yet and no picture yet. They doing a George Zimmerman timeline on this one. Remember, Zimmerman had 41 days before they locked him back up and charged him. So they got Trump in your face like one of them clocks that the hypnotists use. Next time you see Donald Trump, you think about those clocks they swing in your face to put you to sleep. They put them on every hour, every channel. You like, what about the brother that got shot in the back? What about Burkina Faso? Is Congo having what about the Sudan? The brother was at the Super Bowl with Kendrick Lamar. He had the Sudan and Free Palestine. They don't talk about none of that. Where are the people that got displaced in the past year in Palestine? Where are they? What is the situation? Donald Trump, right? Like the teacup and get out. See, this is another thing. Beware of this first stuff. Beware of this. They play this game with us. Oh, he the first black person. Why? That should be our response. Why? Don't electric slide. Don't show them where the fan's at. No. Why? Because they want you to celebrate and get distracted. They want you to leave happy. Oh, we got one of y'all. We got one. Go celebrate him out there. And you should ask, how many did y'all get? I heard a comedian once say, I'm not happy about the first black president. I'll be happy when we get 40 something just like y'all. You know, if you think you deserve what other people deserve, why are you happy with 1% of what somebody else got? But we want people more like Brother Honore. If y'all remember during Katrina, he was the one talking about put your weapons down. Remember they was aiming guns at people that was starving and little kids looking for asylum during the Katrina. And he came out there and used his platform to instill some humanity in the situation. They were so trained and desensitized to black humanity that they just saw black people and started aiming, AR-15s at them. And his brother had made a sacrifice and had disciplined himself and had rose in rank. And in that moment, he can, intercede on our behalf as a people, at least not to go against the American government, but at least to restore our full humanity and dignity and keep us safe. Right? We need people like this, not like this. We don't need this. We need more of this. I'm not saying he's perfect. I don't come up to me later and talk. Well, I heard the brother. I know what the military does. I'm saying if you're gonna be one, be this type and not the other type. So we're on the crest of victory. 3 military presidents and founders of the AES are Burkina Faso president Ibrahim Traore, Niger president, and Mali. Right. So they already looking and they get nervous. They talking about no. We know how to take care of one. We've done that many times before. We ain't never seen 3, 4, 5 at the same time. That's the danger of people uniting. That's why they try to make examples. That's the history of buck breaking. That's why Malcolm was killed at the Audubon and not in his sleep. That's why Kennedy was killed, right there in front of everybody. We got to send a message. Don't do this. They could have got Lincoln after the play. They said, but if we do it in the theater, make a bigger splash. No pun intended, right? So this conversation about the United States of Africa may have never been had at a better time. So basically what Du Bois was envisioning and theorizing and working toward and dreaming about, understanding the problem of racism and the color line. We are at the moment now where the color line is meeting this line that they've continually crossed in terms of colonial conquest. And we have a decision to make. I think the poem says, if we must die, or the Claude McKay, if we must die, right? I think that's where we are right now. The currency is going to whatever, the laws, we are in a constitutional crisis. But Malcolm said it best. Malcolm said, we sick. And I think too many black people right now are looking at all the problems in the world like they're your problems. These ain't your problems. You own less land than you did after emancipation. You got more opportunities to get citizenship around the world you ever had. They still inviting you to Ghana, let alone Burkina Faso. He said, just make the trip. I got you. Go get a passport today, before it's too late and people say you can't leave. Because the same people that told you to go back to Africa, you saw what they did when somebody tried. So you might want to get your passport and everything in order and get your paperwork right, so when they had these checkpoints, and the same people that have been telling you to go back to Africa for 150 years going to say you can't go anywhere. You're an American citizen. You staying right here the rest of your life. Travel is forbidden. The new Constitution that Donald Trump signed. Let me stop. But lucky for us, the ancestors are always at work. You saw that plantation burn down, right? And people was joking, had the barbecues outside and everything, right? There's something to be said. I think the preacher says that God is not to be mocked. And Garvey said, I'll come back with millions of ancestors in the whirlwind. And Hampton said, you can kill a revolutionary. You can't kill a revolution. So there's something about the winds of change. You can lie all you want. You could play all you want. You did all that standing outside with guns so a little girl couldn't go to school. You was cutting into my sisters with no anesthesia, called yourself the father of gynecology. You was doing forced sterilization and sex farms with children and dividing families and whipping people and castrating people. And guess what? You still in demographic decline. You didn't reproduce enough to even care for your own elderly. You're importing people from the islands and from Africa all throughout European nations because you were so busy investing in hate, you didn't invest in life. You played yourself. Now you're scared of the sun because everybody else loving it and it's burning you apart. You should have been thinking about that. You should have been thinking about a new type of sunscreen instead of Ruby Bridges. But you wanted to build 2 water fountains where one would have sufficed. wasting all our natural resources. We had a 260-year head start. Now you wonder why your supply chain done gone to hell, and you the third or fifth largest, supplier of anything in the world. Everything on your back say made in China. That game is not sustainable. You trying to be God is not sustainable, but you trying to be a devil is not sustainable either. Because one day, one way or another, what you do is going to destroy you. But I think what we're doing as a people right now is saying, we in trouble. And I'll be like, we who? Hey, you heard what happened, man? I don't know what's going to happen to us. I said, you mean us like U.S. or U.S.? Because I don't know what's going to happen with the U.S., but I'm confident that U.S. is going to be A-okay. We've done so much with nothing. Some of us need to be, I shouldn't say this. I'm going to say it. Okay. Y'all ain't right. You see how they do? You see how they do me? He said, I shouldn't say it. They say it. Most of us need to be moving back in with our families anyway. You trying to make some rich company more rich instead of caring for the elders that poured into you and breastfed you, taught you how to ride a bike and protected you and taught you how to live life. You go visit them once a year if they lucky, but you go see that boss every darn day. Who wouldn't even let some of your coworkers leave to go to your funeral. They probably say, pick one or two. The rest of y'all got to stay. And you know why they got to stay? They got to stay to train your replacement, because before your body's even in the ground, they got somebody to take your spot. And you done gave your whole life to this job. Most of us need to move in together anyway. You got 5 or 6, 7 people paying 5 or 6, 7 mortgages and rents and wonder why we can't own nothing. They got something they was calling the Mexican mortgage. I don't know if y'all heard about this. Y'all heard about that Mexican mortgage thing? Basically, like what a lot of people do it. Indians do it. A lot of Asian folks do it. They move into a house together. Maybe 6 or 7 people, right? Like like Susu, the Africans. We know. Everybody but us know, right? So they do this cooperative economics. They pay off the mortgage in like 5 to 10 years. They pay a 30-year mortgage off in under 10 years. Then they go buy the house across the street and do the same thing. Then 5 years. So in 30 years, you had one home. In 30 years, they got the whole block. They got 6 houses. So when I say some of us need to stop playing, we're the only ones believing in the American dream. Everybody else uses it as propaganda. We use it as a way of life. They don't believe it themselves. Right? I think it was George Carlin, the white comedian, he said, you had slaveholders talking about wanting freedom. After killing a bunch of Europeans and backstabbing them to get here, after murdering a bunch of indigenous people, and then after using a bunch of black people, they turned around and said, I'm persecuted. I need freedom. And we bought into it. We called them the founding fathers. What's going to happen with us? I said, no. If you didn't like me before, right? I think there was my angel said, once you show me who you are, I believe you. We in a toxic relationship. Somebody done hung you and castrated you and burned you alive and sold pictures of your murder on postcards and parts of your body as souvenirs. And then they bombed your towns, and then they did redlining, and they buried towns underwater, right? Like Lake Lanier and then Seneca Village, and they made it Central Park, and they gave you all this biological warfare, like the medical apartheid book Harry Washington talks about, from colonial times to now. They've been giving you all the worst food, all the worst medicine. They've been giving you experimentation like the Holmesburg prison, bad blood, and Tuskegee. Like you don't know they don't like you? I thought the blackface would have done it. Once somebody paint their face and start acting like you, think like this, you playing with me, you insulting me, right? We saw all of that and still turned around and said, maybe there's a chance. Can you imagine a young lady saying, Professor, if you call me one more time, I'm calling the police. If you show up on this porch, I'm exercising my Second Amendment right. Now, I've been married for 10 years now. I ain't known you since the prom. And you still coming around. You got gray hairs and can you imagine me saying, oh, can we talk? I just want to work it out. I think there still could be a chance, I'm gonna play the song from the prom, Keith Sweat, make it last forever. That's how we look though in this world. We keep running up to him like, could we please, Tevin Campbell, can we talk, right? Nothing to talk about. The conversation should be hands off our brother. That's the conversation. The conversations, I heard what you're trying to do, right? Like when the brother gets a little too rough with the sister and the sister's brothers go and visit the boyfriend. We heard you got a problem keeping your hands to yourself. So we're going to give you somebody to hit. So we all here, you could take your pick. Anybody you want to put your hands on. Now, if you don't want to put your hands on nobody, then don't put your hands on nobody. That's the conversation we need to have right now with the American government. We see that you like to tip out at night after you hypnotize us with Donald Trump, and you go meet with the Ivory Coast leader and try to make deals and set up bases on the perimeter, and then he done fought up against, they said, 13 to 15 assassination attempts. Who you think tried to kill him? You can ask Castro's people about that, right? Spend a whole lifetime trying to kill somebody. You look at COINTELPRO, they said we got to discredit them to at least 3 aspects of the African-American community and the liberal white community. That was a goal. That was how they targeted people. So when they start talking bad about somebody and they not part of the group, you should already say, I'm going to talk to them myself. I promise you right now, if you ever come up to me and say, I want to talk to you about Dr. Asante, I'll say he's right back there. You will not have me in that conversation. Because my first inclination is, why aren't you talking to him? What you trying to do to me? Du Bois said, always Africa is giving us something new or something metempsychosis of the world old thing, right? So we got this whole notion of what's possible, this notion of a new vision, of a new dream, right? And we have a role in this. So this role of ours is to lead this campaign. This, because for whatever reason, 80% of the dances that are made in the world that have international influence are made in the ghettos of America. I don't know why the Hebrew Israelites would say it's because we the Hebrews. Everybody got a reason for why America is who they are in terms of Black America. Whatever the reason you love, African Americans have influence like nobody else on this planet. Young African Americans drive the conversation, the discourse, what's popular, what's in vogue, that cool factor they talked about in the 1950s in that documentary Selling the Negro, right? When they talk about how to sell to Black people. Stay informed but not distracted. They want to Diddy and Trump us to death. Anybody in the room, can you think of one thing that'll change in your life if Diddy is freed or in jail for the rest of his life? I ain't listened to his music in 20 years. Now, if you ask me in the 90s, I'd be like, oh no, they're going to get Diddy. It's a soundtrack to my life. Not Diddy. Who going to make the beats? But at this point, I'm like, he wasn't making the beats no way. And the curtain done got pulled on that. And Diddy ain't been leading the culture in at least 25 years. For you to push a Black person in front of the Black world that has no consequence in the Black world, whether he lives or dies tomorrow, should already tell you, wait a minute now, this a distraction. You gotta know when there's another level to this. I remember I was in the club. I'll end with this. I was in the club one time and I used to get $150 an hour. And I said, whoo, I was rich. Minimum wage was like $6. Oh, you should have saw how I walked in that club. Y'all know George Jefferson? I used to practice walking in the club so the DJ could shout me out. I used to practice pointing. Right? And I get there, I do the whole routine, y'all. Is that young Fearless in the building? I do the whole thing. One night, I just happened for some reason to walk into the room where they were counting the money and the profits and proceeds from the evening. I shouldn't have done that, y'all. That's like staying at a villa when you're used to the Marriott. I love the Marriott, but that's because I ain't never been in no villa. You get them heated marble floors and everything, and the whole building is yours. He said, I can't go back to the Marriott. I saw them counting that money. You know what he said to me? He said, thank you. You did good tonight. And he took this little $300 and it had to be like $50,000. And I'm sweating. I did all the work. I got in my car so mad with that money. I said, I ain't never going to be in the almost room again. Everywhere I go now, I'm looking at the door. I'm looking at the bar. I'm counting how many people paid for parking. I done peeped the whole game now. So my whole world changed. So now even when I look at politics, I see these things that way. I say, oh no, Diddy wasn't this important when he was making music. Diddy wasn't in the media this much when he was becoming a billionaire. But you have a tactical political use to propagandize and distract Black people. So you're using Diddy. You think they care about Diddy? You think they care about the Black women that he abused? And you got us going at each other. You got brothers and sisters arguing. I mean, we online fighting each other. Who you said free Tory Lanez and I'm with Megan Thee Stallion and you like Diddy and arguing about all this nonsense. But I say we got to stay woke. Billions are given to other nations while they deny reparations for the descendants of enslaved Africans. I mean, 2 more minutes. These 5 countries have received over 30% of the U.S. foreign aid since World War II. And if you see Egypt, we already got a lot of good brothers from the Sudan who are giving presentations, so you know the politics of that. That's because they act like Egypt ain't part of Africa. Look at Israel. $337 billion. Before you get to any liberated black nation, you got to go through South Korea first. South Korea ain't had no slaves in America. But it's, again, political interest, economic interest. When you know why somebody, you know, what somebody's why is, and you understand them. If you say, oh, Trump is motivated by praise and control and power, he said, oh, okay, I get it. That's why he would bury his wife at Mar-a-Lago so he can avoid 3 types of taxes, you know, because that's what happens. They deem your property, you know, a cemetery, and you get tax breaks. But most of us would say, what type of man would not even get along with a woman, cheat on a woman, and then take the woman's remains for a tax break? But if you say this man is obsessed with compliments and money and power, you say, oh, it makes perfect sense then. That's money and power. And he looks like he's a nice guy. Looks like he want to be close to her. 66.5 billion to the Ukraine since 2022, y'all. I gotta say this to black people because I seen there's a famous podcast, a Joe Budden podcast for like hip hop people, and the one brother said, I don't support reparations. And I said, this brother's in the way. He got too big of a platform to be even saying stupid stuff like this right now. You know, sometimes you gotta move people out the way. You don't need the mic, brother. We need you that if you feel that way in 2025 to at least remain silent. I know a lot of Jewish brothers and sisters who didn't support Israel, who didn't say nothing about it though. Just like when it was Jussie Smollett, he said he was attacked by some MAGA people, and like Dave Chappelle said, we knew he was lying, but we didn't say nothing. We just, you know, said that story don't sound right, but we ain't gonna say nothing. You know, leave it alone. That's what black people do. When black people leave it alone, that means we're not with you. We're not gonna march against you. But if you don't see us marching, we don't believe you. But we're not gonna give these white folks what they want and be out here giving it. No, $66.5 billion. And do y'all remember when the Ukraine was first going through what they was going through, them black brothers and sisters couldn't get on the trains, and they made them brothers and sisters walk with their families for 22 and 50 and some odd miles. Y'all remember that, right? They were saying only Ukrainians. And the black people was like, I thought I was a Ukrainian. They said yesterday, when we needed you as an international student so we can get these government grants, you know, we can have all y'all people come over, Africa, come on, black people, we inclusive. We need these diversity grants and education. But once people were in trouble and about to be murdered, they said, our babies over your babies. And they closed them trains doors like it was 1942. And a lot of them continental Africans, that was their first time experiencing it. And the black people in America was like, told you. You know, he came over here like, what's wrong with y'all? That. Stay engaged. It is today that our best work could be done and not some future day or future year. And the book is here. But I will leave with that quote because I want y'all to understand that now is the time. Have a conversation, do a post, get people engaged in this conversation about what's happening in Burkina Faso. At least just to ask if they know who the brother is and spread the word, because CNN and MSNBC and everybody else, the first time they're going to talk about the brother is going to be something negative. And if this was the 1990s and before the internet got popping, they would have tried to run Brother Langley for president. That same sergeant that's going overseas and doing all these covert black ops operations, using his black skin to infiltrate black nations, they would have let him go quiet underground for about 5 to 10 years and retire. They would have put him straight into politics and threw him in our face, talking about he could be your first black this and your first black that. And he's a 4-star general. And we wouldn't know nothing he did over there in Africa. Word to Colin Powell shaking hands with Nixon while we was out in the streets begging a black person to do something. Because that's what Colin Powell was doing back in the 60s when everybody else was dying in the streets. Colin Powell was sitting there shaking hands and smiling with Nixon. And they came to us talking about something. I know you never heard of him, but his nice brother named Colin Powell. He's from Newark, New Jersey, Brick City. And he black. And we bought it. We said, oh, he seemed pretty chill. The brother seemed like a good brother, you know. I'm not saying he's not, but we could have used some help, brother. You was in the White House. We was talking about it. Gil Scott-Heron, we was singing about what we might do. You was there with the president. Dr. King had to call him. He was right there in the White House with a military position. I never heard a single word from Colin Powell from 1959 to 1979 while Malcolm got shot, while King got shot, while Kennedy got killed. What was you doing back then, brother? You know, I know what you did last summer. So right now, we can't let them ever put Langley in our face. Because we know even in Pennsylvania, they're quick to use a conservative or ex-athlete, you know. So maybe it won't be Langley. Maybe it'll be Saquon. But with that, I yield. Thank you very much for your time. I think I got enough trouble. Go Birds! Go Birds! Go Birds. It'd be 2032. Saquon for president. And half the Eagle fans gonna be so conflicted. We ain't gonna know what to do. They gonna play them highlights. They gonna show us at the art museum celebrating. We gonna be like, I'm conflicted. I don't know where to go, green or black. But thank y'all very much. And we got some books. I don't know if they got questions, but you want to do questions or you want to do books?
All right. Thank you. Wow. Boy, this has been
the revolution is on and happening.
It's definitely on.
Yes,
brother has laid it down today.
Yes, he did.
Wow. And I'll say this just before we have questions. If Shaquan wants to come and apologize, MKA, he can come right here, MKA, and make his statement to the community. We'll love that. But this has been an incredible talk, and we really appreciate Dr. Aday for his skill and his ability. So we have the book. He has the book for sale. How much is the book for sale? $35 for the book. But before that, we do have time for 2 or 3 questions. So you have the microphone. We have the microphone.
Right here. I got it. Yeah, okay.
Go right here, Doctor.
Very inspiring, very educational, and very enlightening conversation we just had. Do you think that Du Bois, Booker T, and Garvey were that far apart in their opinions about how to lead Black America?
I'll say this 2 ways. I'll say no, but I'll say in terms of the differences, strategy and not goal. And again, it's like that 3-card model. It's like that game, right? It's the shell game. Because even in the way you frame the question, the answer is actually in there. The fact that you said that they were all basically working to help Black people. Mm-hmm. You would think, if, back in the day when y'all in elementary, they say, what's the subject, right? What's the predicate, right? What's the main subject in, right? If you sometimes they ask you summarize, right? What is this passage about? If you had to be concise, what is it? I could read a whole thing about Du Bois and a whole thing about Garvey. What are these people about? Uplift and liberation of African people. But they have so skillfully managed the history that they got you thinking about the slim point of contention on this Venn diagram and the disagreement more than the overarching agreement in terms of goal. And they say, well, look at the difference in direction. Look at Malcolm and Martin. Look at their different directions. That's the small part. The larger part is look at these 2 Black men ready to die for their people. Look at these 2 Black men giving up time with their families and an opportunity to pursue other dreams, like Malcolm wanted to be a lawyer. Look at them giving up their lives, literally, and in terms of culture and aspiration. Look at these Black men standing up for us. They wave away all that and say, but look at this little part right here. He Christian, he Muslim, look at it. He non-violent, right? But I think the larger answer is the focus should be on all the things that they were trying to do for us and not the ways they were trying to do it. But even in terms of strategy, I think there's a lot more, similar than the dominant society would want to promote.
Thank you, Doctor. I wanted to talk about the Diddy situation. I think it's more of a psychological warfare tactic. Mm-hmm. In that they are showing how much, how despicable some of our people can be, and they're publicizing it. They're talking about all kind of filthy things that we wouldn't even, like you said, what importance is it to us, except to put out that kind of negative information? So that I was wondering if you had any thoughts about that.
I definitely do. I was looking for that picture. There's I'll bring it up when the next question's coming up. But there's a famous propaganda picture about Negro rule. Y'all familiar with that? Where they showed a black man with wings looking like a monster. It was used on the Roots album. And they've always wanted us to look like we had super low intelligence and superhuman strength and an overactive sex drive, right? Like these are things that's always been promoted. So anything that falls, into any of these lanes, they always want to say, like, look. So it's like a humiliation ritual. It is definitely an attempt to degrade African people who previously have had moral high ground, not just politically, but also in terms of things. Even recently, people are talking about they don't use washcloths. And the whole history of the Moors in Spain, teaching them how to bathe. There's always been this issue of, who's really a thug or who's really what they call a savage, right? So there's always this idea of ways to try to focus on the worst elements of Black culture and present them as the dominant representations of Black life in an attempt to assassinate the character, when otherwise they would say, hey, these people don't have much, but they seem very proud. And their houses are very clean. And your houses are usually only clean when they come clean them. Right? That's like if they so inferior, why are you letting their women breastfeed your children, right? There was always this thing where the lie had to be propagated because it didn't just exist naturally. And if you're just superior, then you could just let everybody play fairly. And the only reason why you want to interfere is because you got a complex, right? But I think they want to degrade Black people and our image throughout the world. And I don't think it has as much to do nationally as we think, because they've learned through what they've done with hip hop. When they promoted all that gangster rap and hip hop, you got people going overseas and people calling them the N-word and all that, right? So they know what they've done with that was successful, and they want to do the same thing with us in terms of our sexual immorality. They want to use people like P. Diddy as a poster child for Black relationships.
Also, the frames of the repeated 10 guys that broke out of prison.
You need the microphone.
Oh, okay. I was just going to add that the psychological warfare also includes showing the 10 men that ran out of the Louisiana prison.
Oh, yeah.
They're out of the jail, and they keep showing these men just jumping off the stage jumping off the platform and running away.
No, definitely. On repeat. I was trying to find that thing, but any more questions?
Dr. Jabali, your lecture helps to strengthen the foundation of Africans and the consciousness of them. Your description of Du Bois, Marcus Garvey, Kwame Nkrumah, and so forth helps to spread the news. Your mentioning of the Pan-African Congress helps to maintain that I'm into comment that it can be a solution to the current problems that we maintain and we try to acquire and keep the wisdom of the leaders that came before us. And your lecture helps to continue that process to keep going on about the leaders that we have.
One thing I want to share is in vain with the last answer I gave. Does anybody know how many articles they said Du Bois wrote? Just off chance, I made sure I looked it up to get the most recent count. They said W.E.B Du Bois wrote and published over 4,000 articles, essays, and books. They got us focused on everything else about Du Bois, but what we need to emulate. What could inspire us to understand, again, what's possible and charge us to do more in our own academic and scholarly lives. You don't need a degree to write or to read. How are you going to know Du Bois? And they said, like, they should say, you want to be like Malcolm, but you over there having a bunch of snacks. He said, Malcolm had one meal a day. You ain't living like Malcolm. He said, Malcolm didn't talk like that. I never heard Malcolm using those kind of words. So he said, if you're going to follow him, follow him. You're going to be inspired for real. You want to talk Du Bois and be like Du Bois, be productive in an uncanny way that people won't even understand at the end of your life, how you got it done. And to me, like, that's far more important. But the first thing they always say, you know who he was fighting with? He was fighting with Marcus Garvey. Why you keep bringing us discord? Why you keep wanting to author confusion? Like, what type of devil? Like, what? I'm talking about in the classroom. They'll present this in junior high and high school, and they'll make sure they talk about the contention with other Black leadership, as though they cared about any of them. I'm talking about teachers who were alive when Malcolm and Martin were alive. Now they want to teach the difference between them and how they didn't get along, as opposed to the ways that they were attacked, similarly. But next question.
Yes, my name is Dr. Siddiqui. We need to control our narrative, first of all. We are so educated, we forgot to find out who we are.
Mm-hmm.
See, we know everybody else's history but ourselves because it's a requirement. Anything that's a requirement is from the system, but when it's a requirement for us, it's almost like, what?
Mm-hmm.
We get attitude. I don't have to prove nothing to nobody and so forth. So, but everything in this society is about business. Everything, including religion. Everything. So, and so we are so religious, we forgot to be spiritual. See, we are spiritual first and we transformed into the physical. We need to get our signals correct. See, some of us are not scared, but most of us are.
I'm scared you're not going to ask a question.
Huh?
I'm scared you're not going to ask a question because I know everybody in here got a couple of lectures in they on their heart.
But my thing is this, yes, sir.
Just for the sake of time, that's all.
I've been knowing you for a few years.
Yes, sir.
And I appreciate your progress and your relationship with Dr. Sante. You've been together for so long, it's rubbing off. I don't know which one is who if I just hear your voice because you're saying the same things.
That means I'm a good student.
And that's what I love.
That's the goal. I learned that from Malcolm. Maybe I say the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches.
That's what I love. So what do you feel that everything takes a process? This even took us a process to get crazy. So what kind of process do you feel that we should be about in order to regain our balance? Because everything is about balance.
I'll give some practical things I thought about even this morning. Family dinner and game night. Family dinner and game night. Because you talk about the process, you got to talk about the starting point. I'm not getting all deep. I'm not getting all abstract. I'm not talking about the wheel in the wheel. I'm not talking about the Anunnakis. You need to have better contact with your family. And I've been pushing this whole movement in together, right? But at least forgiveness. I always say that. Some people ain't even speaking to family members. That's a good place to start. I didn't even say in person. No risk of nobody doing nothing. You can hang up at any time. Just to make a call with a family member you haven't talked to in 10, 20 years. That's a start. You in the same house, y'all all on devices, even when you are eating. Let's change that. Let's really check in with each other. Let's have the politics of family before we have the politics of community and nation building. Let's find out what everybody's doing in terms of in school and in life. So nobody's depressed or lonely or on edge or failing or, being confused about their life or who they are as a person, right? Let's bring that back. Because ironically, we just did it 2 years ago. We thought we couldn't do all this stuff. Then COVID hit. We all went in the house. And we stayed there. And right now, the way things are, we need to go back in the house. Some of us had parents that would say, take it inside. Something be happening on the block that shouldn't be happening. Your mom be like, what you doing out there with them? They out there fighting. Well, you get in the house. Well, what that got to do with you? And right now, America is having a situation that don't got too much to do with us. And we need a parental ancestral voice to say, take your butt in the house. What you doing out here in it? What's Trump doing? What's Ukraine doing? What that got to do with you? They wouldn't even let you on the train. Why are you invested? Why you got your TV tuned to that instead of talking to your child or talking to your elder who's a walking library before they transition? Go get some real information, build up your family, and build real community. Start talking to each other when you pass each other on the street. Some of y'all from down south say we still do it, but around here, that'd be a major change. Black people smiling at each other, asking how the children are, like we did, like that's a real thing. How you doing, brother? How you doing, sister? Sisters going into spaces where there's all brothers and feeling safer instead of feeling in danger. That's a revolution right there. Could you imagine a sister who's in her aging years, seeing a bunch of young brothers and being encouraged? I'm not gonna have to carry my groceries. Glad I seen a young brother, because back in the day, that's what it used to mean. And if they came up to you, they're probably gonna ask you if they can help you. And maybe give them a nickel or something. I'm just saying, it didn't mean danger. The same babies that you born and raised and reared and looked after, now they're your number one threat in your own community. We don't need to get deep and theoretical and philosophical and professorial. We need to return to our humanity. I think that's the first step in our process. Thank you.
Thank you, bro. I think you should go so you can sign books.
Okay. Okay. And I'm gonna go up front so I can sign the
Yeah,
book.
he's going. Yeah, our speaker is going to go. He'll be outside. He'll be signing books at the table. All right. Yes, sir.
Am I here? Okay. Brother Aaron, don't go nowhere. I hope you can answer this or put some focus on it. This past week, I got logged in one morning. I was watching a YouTube piece, and the highlight on it says Jamie Foxx testifies in Diddy trial. It was over an hour and a half of a presentation that was an AI presentation. It was not an actual thing. What is your thought as to how we can counter? Because our youth are getting caught up, and I had an elder to call me and.
Oh no, I got you. I'm not gonna say who in my family because they might be watching.
Go ahead, bro.
But I get phone calls all the time about news stories that aren't real. And I gotta say that didn't really happen. And sometimes the elders are used to news at least being, news. You usually don't find out that it's artificial intelligence until they read a name that's common and they read it wrong. They'll say like Sean Diddy Combs, and you'll be like, no, this is a computer, right? But until then, they can literally do text prompts or news stories. And what people are doing now, they're making a lot of money with what they call no-face accounts. No-face accounts is just the artificial intelligence will produce the images and it'll give a word and you can actually pick a voice. And people are making thousands and thousands of dollars on the internet right now because they got mostly our young people watching this like it's real life when a lot of it is just a computer reading news articles or creating stories. Because you can actually say create a story. So no, it's a dangerous, but then that's why I say we got to unplug. The internet right now is so much of the wild, wild west, more than it's been since the only time it's been like this before is in the beginning. We were stealing all the music and Napster and all that. The only time it's been this unregulated with this new AI stuff, because now it's a whole virtual parallel universe that has very real consequences. And when you're engaged with devices more than you're engaged with actual people, it's already bad enough. But when you compound that with the fact that the information that they are engaging with is not true and negative, we have to head this off. But oftentimes, I notice this. I'll tell you this. Young people prefer playing than playing on devices. When I say young, I mean real young. You got to get them early. But when I talk to 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds, if they're on devices and I am willing to play a game and they see an adult get off the couch and on the floor and get ready, oh, I got them for an hour or two. Yeah, fake food, they serving me and we cooking, right? So you just got to, intercede at the right time. You can't go to a bunch of 16, 17-year-olds and say, put your phones away. No, because this is our best friend. And this is the one that was with us when we was crying and wanting to play with you and get guidance and spend time with you. So don't come late like a deadbeat dad at a college graduation or an NBA draft and talk about we need to talk. No, we don't. I'll be up front.
All right, all right, give it up. All right, wonderful, fantastic. All right, so before we leave, a couple of things. I want to just say to Brother Stan Straughter is here. Brother Stan Straughter yesterday had an incredible event, the African Liberation Day celebration. And Dr. Dove and I were there to speak in West Philadelphia at the Akana. This was an amazing event. And I told Brother Stan that we have to do something similar here at the MKA Institute. And we'll be planning something here in a similar fashion, and you'll be invited. But it was a wonderful day, and Brother Stan is on our board. We're very proud of him, and we're very, very appreciative of what he did yesterday. I want to also thank Brother Kareem, Brother Carlton, who always come and help us out technically, because without him, we are not able to do our YouTube streaming. So we're very, very proud of his work. This brother, if he were charging us as a consultant, he would be making tens of thousands of dollars, but we don't have that kind of money. But if you have a donation you would like to give to the Institute, you can give it to the receptionist, who is Anna Yaninga Asante, and that will be helpful for this organization. But we're just really proud of you to have come here to hear this great Dr. Jabali Aday. So I'm going to ask you to join with me. We call upon our ancestors far and near, the father of our fathers, the mother of our mothers, to render mercy and to bear witness for the liberation and the victory of all oppressed people forever. And we say it is done. And remember, Ashe, remember on June 1st, introducing Amadou Tunkara. Amadou Tunkara will be here. Is he here today? Is Amadou here? Amadou is not here today. I don't see him. Amadou Tunkara will be talking for about 15 minutes, and then we'll have Donald Scott on the Montiers, a Philadelphia family's generational epic. That's on June 1st at 4 o'clock. Asante Sana. Thank you very much.